Hey gang, so sitting there thinking today, we got all these new bows coming out for 2025. Actually, they're already out, and every year the claim is lighter and faster, lighter and faster. And I sit there thinking, I'm like, I was upstairs and watching some reviews on different bows, and I'm sitting there thinking, well, that's interesting because I've got a ton of different bows here. I've got my son's American bow from 1960s. I've got my PSE from the 1990s. I've got a Hoyt from the early 2000s. I believe it's a 2007. I have a Hoyt RX4. That'd be about 4 years old now. And my son's got a couple of Hoyt bows that are a couple years old. So I was kind of curious, is there a difference in weight? When my son's not here, he has a different draw length than I do. So I want to test the speed, but I can only test the speeds on my bow because he's a different draw length than I am. And I suppose I could throw some arrows through. I just want to have the... Anyways. That's neither here nor there. But I was kind of curious. Are bows really lighter today than they were, what, 60 years ago? Why don't we take a look at that? Let's see what it looks like. Alright gang, so we got a little scale. Here we can see what the weight is. We can also see what the draw weight is. Let's start grabbing bows, and we'll go ahead, go through them, and compare their weights to start off with. Alright gang, so we're going to start off with the American bow from the 1960s. It's just got a pretty inexpensive sight, pretty inexpensive stabilizer, but it does have the necessary hardware. Let's take a look and see here. Oh, I gotta turn that on. Turn it on. Okay, zero out. Okay, looks like it comes in at 4.52 pounds. So the American comes in at 4.52 pounds. I'm going to write that down. Now we're just going to move through the list. Alright, next we're going to grab my old Bear Whitetail Hunter 2. Now this one's going to be a little bit different. We do have the quiver mounted on there. Obviously the sights are way old school on this one. But let's grab a weight. I got it. Okay, now we'll grab a weight. There's no way. That says 4.52 as well. That can't be right. Huh. I wasn't expecting that. The American and the old Bear Whitetail Hunter come in at the same weight. So now we'll grab the PSE. This is from 1996. So we did a 1960s first, 1970s. So now we're getting 20 years newer. Let's go ahead and see what this scales out at. .26. So the old PSE comes in just a little bit heavier than the two older bows. I'm going to go ahead and write that down, and we'll move on to the next bow. So now we're jumping up to 2007 with the Hoyt Tricon. And this has a solid mounted sight. It's got a stabilizer. It's got a wrist strap. So let's see what this thing scales in at. .44. So as we're getting newer, we're getting heavier. All right, let's move on to the next bow. All right, so now we're on to the Hoyt RX4. This is a carbon fiber bow, so it's supposed to be pretty lightweight. Again, we got a stabilizer on here. This is just a cheaper stabilizer. We've got sight on there, a little bit nicer sight than what the previous bows had. Now let's take a look at how this weighs. Now we're going from 2007 to 2020. So this one comes in a little bit lighter than the 2007 Hoyt Tricon. I'm going to go ahead and write that down. Then we'll move on to, we'll grab one of my son's bows. We'll probably do both my son's bows, and we'll even test my wife's Hoyt Cobalt. So let's continue on. All right. So next we're going to test the weight of the Hoyt Torex. My son bought this new, I want to say last year. So you can kind of take a look at what it's got on it for equipment. Whisker biscuit, 3-pin sight, stabilizer, wrist strap. Let's see what this thing scales out at. .80. So the Hoyt Torex set up similar to my Hoyt RX4 carbon fiber bow is just a smidgen lighter. Now again, we're not weighing them naked, so there could be some variations in the weight of the sight, the weight of the stabilizer, but they're all basically set up the same, so we're just going to run with that. All right, this is my son's Hoyt VTM. Again, you got your sight on here. It's a single pin sight. He uses this bow for target shooting. We've got a stubby stabilizer. So let's go ahead and check the weight of this thing. .22 for the VTM, and I can feel the difference in weight from this, my son's VTM, to his Torex. I mean, the VTM is a much more pricier bow than what the Torex is. So let's continue on. All right, the last bow we'll test out is my wife's Hoyt Cobalt. It's got a 5-pin sight on it, stabilizer, wrist strap and a whisker biscuit. So let's see what this thing scales in at. This feels super light. So the white cobalt comes in at 4.06 pounds. All right, gang, so the results are in. Pretty interesting. So the lightest bow that was in here was my wife's white cobalt, and that doesn't surprise me. It's a woman's, or I don't want to just say women's, an entry-level bow for youth and women. It does have a big range of adjustability. It's a really nice shooting bow. So I'm not trying to disregard that bow at all. It's a great bow, performs very well. And but that came in at the lightest at 4.06 pounds. Then the two next lightest bows were the American bow from the 1960s at 4.52 pounds. And then the Bear Whitetail Hunter 2 from the 1970s also came in at 4.52 pounds. And then from there, it jumped up just a little bit. The PSE from 1996 was 5.26 pounds. The Tricon from 2007, 6.44 pounds, so that bow actually came in the heaviest. The RX4 from 2020 came in at 5.92 pounds, and that's a carbon fiber bow, so that's one of the things they tote is because carbon fiber, a lighter weight. VTM, my son's VTM, I think that's like a 2-year-old bow, maybe 3. That came in at 6.22 pounds. And then his Hoyt Torex, which is I believe a year old, came in at 5.80 pounds. So that's a very interesting result, considering they always claim lighter and faster. Now, I'm going to do some shooting. I'm not going to shoot my son's newer bows. I will shoot his American, and I won't shoot my wife's bow. But the rest of the bows, why don't we shoot and just kind of get an idea of what their speeds are. So are we actually lighter and faster? So far we're proving the older bows are lighter. Will they be faster? Let's take a look. All right, so the next thing we better do is get some draw weights, just so we know what we're pulling, so we can get kind of a fair comparison. Now, the newer bows, they do have some advantages. Weight is definitely not one of them. But the cam design, they're a lot shorter. I mean, this is a super long bow. There are advantages to newer bows. But let's go ahead, get the draw weight of each of the bows we're going to shoot, and then we'll weigh the arrow so we know what the arrow weight is, and we'll go ahead and throw some arrows. Turn this on, get it reset. Get in there. $52.78. Okay, and just to be clear on something, this old Bear Whitetail Hunter 2 bow, we will not be shooting that bow. That is a wall hanger only. That was the first bow I shot with many years ago, but the limbs are not any good for shooting anymore, so that's just a wall hanger. We will not be testing that bow. but we do have the PSE from 1996. Let's go ahead and find out what the draw weight is on this thing. $60.26. All right, next we'll get the draw weight of the Hoyt Tricon from 2007. $60.88. The last one we're going to pull back is the Hoyt RX4. Like I said, I believe this is manufactured in 2020. Reset that. Zero it out. So the RX4 is set at 55.52. 55.52. All right, so we're going to go ahead and scale 3 arrows. They're all Easton Game Getter. So 528.6. They should all be pretty close. $526.8. $525.2. Okay, well, so there's about roughly a 3 ounce or 3 grain difference between the arrows, which is nominal. But yeah, we'll go ahead and send some arrows to a couple of these bows, well, 4 of them anyways, and see what we get. Alright, gang, let's throw an arrow through here. We might throw a couple arrows. We can see that or not. 180. So first arrow through was a 180. $182. $178. All right, so we got our speed off of this one. Let's move on to the 1996 PSE. See how that does. All right, next we'll shoot the 1996 PSE. $227. $229. $226. All right, so next we will shoot the 2007 Hoyt Tricon. Now I'm shooting 3 arrows through each one, and we'll take the average of the arrows, and that way it'll give us a good comparison. So let me get the Tricon set up, and we'll throw some arrows through that. All right, gang, so next we'll do the Hoyt Tricon from 2007. 218. .218 again. .215 on that one. All right, so the white Tricon, 218, 218, and the 215. All right, so the last one we got to shoot is the RX4, which that's about 5 pounds less weight draw than what this bow and the PSE were. So let's get that set up and see how that does. All right, so the last one we're gonna do is the white RX4. Now, like I said, this is 5 pounds draw poundage lighter than the last two bows. .223, 222, 225. Okay, so we had a 223, 222, and a 225 out of this bow. I'm going to collect arrows, get this bow back the way it's supposed to be, tabulate the numbers, and we'll take a look at them. Alright, gang. So, that was a fun test. Having all these different bows at the house here, being able to grab things and see what, what it's all about. And I just want to remind you, why did we do this test? Well, we did this test because, again, it's watching reviews. You hear the manufacturer saying, this year's bow is lighter, this year's bow is faster. Does that really mean anything? Well, the results are in, and I don't think it does. The lightest bows that are in my basement are bows that are 50 and 60 years old. So, there you go. And by a considerable amount. Pretty amazing. So the newer bows definitely are not lighter. And maybe when they talk about lighter, maybe they're saying compared to last year's model of the same bow, maybe it's lighter. But I think you got to take it all with a grain of salt, because all the new bows are going to be, I think, and I could be wrong. And if your manufacturer out there want me to test them out, I will be more than happy to see how you compare to your competitor. But I think they're all, within a few ounces, half pound to a pound of each other. So, yeah, and just like the speed test we did not that long ago with different arrows, I was saying that the manufacturer has an advertised speed, and their advertised speed, again, I think you need to take with a grain of salt, because it's going to be max weight, max draw, and probably the lightest arrow you can find. I don't even know what the lightest arrow is, to be perfectly honest, but probably not one that's going to be good for hunting. So, the speed thing I take with a grain of salt, and even like when every year they say lighter, 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 I'm just like, how much lighter can you be? By now, 100 years later of building bows, they should weigh nothing. They should be lifting our arm up, for God's sakes. And they don't. So yeah, I don't really, when they're saying lighter and faster, take that with a grain of salt. Because here's our results. The two lightest bows were a 60-year-old bow and a 50-year-old bow. My fastest speed of down here today was from my bow from 1996. My RX4, which was from 2020, was 4 feet per second slower than the 1996 bow. Although, I'm going to say this, the RX4 is 5 pounds in draw weight different. So I don't know exactly how many feet per second you're gonna get per pound of draw weight. So how much difference would that make? Maybe it would be be the same as what the PSE is for the speed. So yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. Because I was expecting, and I'll be honest with you, I was expecting the newer bow to be considerably faster actually, and I'll tell you why. You got these really short limbs, they got a lot of pre-tension on them, you know, they're beyond parallel. They got huge cams, so you would think that's going to create a lot more speed, but apparently it doesn't. But what it does create is a very smooth bow, a very good bow as far as like no recoil. Because my 1996 PSE, that's got a ton of recoil, and the thing will launch out of your hand if you're not paying attention. So that's the new bows. The technology in new bows is fantastic. They are so far superior as far as shock and recoil go. But speed, I'm gonna give it to my old PSE, and I've always believed that. When I bought my Tricon, I'm like, I still think my PSE is faster than a Tricon. When I bought this RX4, I'm like, I think the PSE is faster. I didn't have a way to test it, now I do. So yeah, that's very interesting to see these numbers. Anyways, so yeah, so we had just a quick review. PSE, 5.26 pounds, 60 pounds of draw weight, 60.26, 227 feet per second. The White Tricon from 2007, 6.44 pounds, 60.88 pounds of draw, 217 feet per second. RX4 from 2020, 5.92 pounds in weight, 55.52 draw weight, average speed of 223 feet per second. The arrow was an Easton Game Getter, weighing in at 527 grains. So that's the numbers. Pretty interesting. That was a lot of fun. The last thing I'd like to talk about is when you're looking at a new bow, or if you're just getting into archery and you're learning, go to the shop, put different bows in your hand, different manufacturers, see how they feel, see how they shoot, pick the bow that feels right to you, because each one has a different feel, and it's important to find one that fits well for you. And the bow you might like, it may not be the bow that your favorite influencer is using. Your influencer, let him get you in the archery door, but you need to test different bows out and find the one that feels right to you. All right, well, I appreciate you guys coming along. This test was a ton of fun, and we'll see you on the next.